principios de la movilidad sostenible, incorporando también diferentes visiones técnicas, operativas, públicas y privadas, hasta culminar con su articulación con la industria del hidrógeno verde y con la innovación. La construcción y el fortalecimiento de capacidades es un compromiso que desde la Organización Latinoamericana y Caribeña de Energía se renueva también para este año que inicia. Continuamos también el trabajo por entregar las diferentes herramientas esenciales para el futuro energético de América Latina y del Caribe. La formación académica de alto nivel es definitivamente un catalizador para la transformación de nuestra región y esta visión de excelencia educativa que promueve y respalda el ACDE se traduce también en experiencias formativas de alto
Training
impacto.
experiences that have a high impact, such as this international diploma in electromobility, and also provides workshops for everybody, which will be able to be shared through our training platform virtually, which is Cape Black. You will be able to find it in our social networks. Definitely, our partnerships with our higher education institutions, Latin America and the Caribbean, allow us to strengthen this mission that we have. And that's why I would like to thank for the hard work and equality work and professionalism that the team from the University of Santiago de Chile has had with us. Together with Olacte's team, every rapporteur, every presenter, and overall, I would like to thank the participation and fulfillment of each and every one of you, our students. The closing session, which has brought us together, considers three main keynote presentations that will share the future about electromobility in the region. We're going to start with an analysis of one of the critical minerals that is much more studied over the last few years, which is lithium, followed by the projection and learning from Costa Rica and Central America. And then we will also get to know the testimonial and the Chilean example in the transformation of the public transportation system. The first keynote presentation, which is what I'm welcoming right now, is from Dra. Elena Santos. She is a founder of the Lithium Observatory in the University of Sao Paulo. She's a sociologist and a graduate in geography. She's a master's in energy granted by the Federal University of ADC, and she is a PhD by the University of Coimbra. She also did a postdoc studies in the advanced studies of the University of Sao Paulo in Brazil, and she has researched the impact about the exploitation of critical materials in small municipalities from its social perspectives, political perspectives, and geostrategic perspectives. Currently, she is also a researcher in the National Laboratory of Energy and Geology in Portugal, where she also carries out the Solitec project, which is a cross-disciplinary project regarding the value chain of lithium and also the dynamics of the energy transition in raw materials that are strategic for Brazil and Portugal. So I want to give you the warmest of welcome, Elaine, so that you are going to be able to share your presentation. So please, the floor is yours. I'm going to share my presentation, so give me a minute, please. Can you see the presentation? I think that you can see it, right? Yes, you can see it perfectly. Very well, so good afternoon, everybody. I would like to thank the organizers for the invitation to this keynote session of the International Diploma in Electromobility. I have given it this title, Critical Minerals and Electromobility, Lithium's Trajectory in Brazil and its Geopolitical Challenges. And the reason behind this title is because these are the topics that I have been able to research over the last few years. And I will also give you a general outlook of the situation in Brazil. My name is Elaine Santos. I am currently speaking to you from Portugal. Here it's very late. And from here, I have started to develop a project related to strategic raw materials. I also want to take advantage to apologize due to my limited Spanish, which is not the best, but I do think that you will be able to understand me, and I'm going to speak slowly to make our communication a lot easier. Very well, so I am studying the energy since 2017, with a focus on strategic raw materials since 2017. And currently, I participate in a project which is called the Social Political Challenges of Lithium Production on the Path to Energy Transition, the cases of Portugal and Brazil. Basically, this project is being developed in the National Laboratory of Energy and Geology in Portugal, which is a state-owned Portuguese lab. And this project analyzes all of the value chain in the countries, and it is cross-disciplinary in its nature. As you are able to see in the graph, the project has geopolitical issues, productive scientific ones, political economics, and socio-environmental. For this reason, the project is developed within the geology laboratory. Even though I'm a sociologist and my object is to be able to analyze the different dimensions of this thing. So what has happened in electromobility in Brazil? Basically, Brazil does not start from scratch. Our country has a long-standing trajectory with regards to mobility. Historically, our fleet was developed as a hybrid fleet, which was based on ethanol, biomass, and petroleum subproducts. This project was consolidated through the Pro Alcohol project, sorry, which was a response to a petroleum crisis in the 1970s. And during the last couple of years, however, we are able to see that there's a significant growth and quite consistent with regards to electric vehicles, hybrid plug-in or conventional hybrid vehicles. Just to give you some information, in 2023, the sales grew in 91%. That went from 49,000 to close to 94,000 vehicles that will register, according to the data from the Brazilian Association of Electrical Vehicles. These numbers give Brazil at a comparable level to countries like India, Thailand, or even Indonesia. However, the data do not state that there is a definite transition towards completely plug-in vehicles in detriment of conventional hybrids. This scenario can be explained because of very structural environments in Brazil. Brazil has a very complex fuel matrix, a very limited coverage of networks, and also the possibility of consumers purchasing these vehicles. And at the same time, we have an electrical matrix that is highly renewable, with close to an 85% of clean energy sources. Therefore, there are tax relief and financing lines for electrical vehicles. However, its scope and scale is still quite limited in comparison to leading countries in electrification. And all of this states that the Brazilian case, the transition will probably happen through the different coexistence of our different technologies in the upcoming years. And for me, this also suggests that the value chain of electrical vehicles will need to develop outside of Brazil because our raw materials will primarily be exported. Seeing as our country has a big internal market, but it does not appear willing, at least in the short term, to be able to try to radically transform its fleet, which is already advanced, into renewable sources. Now moving from the mineral value chain, because independently whether we talk about pure EVs or plug-in hybrids or conventional hybrid vehicles, all of them share the same material, and all of them depend on batteries, on specific components, and on critical minerals. Therefore, the technological diversification does not eliminate the material dependency. On the other hand, it reorganizes it, because without lithium, there's no batteries, and without batteries, there's no electromobility. I am investigating lithium not because it's the only mineral, but also because it structures the value chain in the batteries that right now sustain electromobility, globally speaking. And when we talk about lithium, we're talking about a strategic resource. But what exactly is a strategic resource? This is a concept, and this concept is an object of conceptual debate. Therefore, here on screen, we are able to see, I'm not going to go into a theoretical debate, but just very simply, we're talking about strategic resources when we have a definition, which are resources that are considered of extremely important for national security, based on their characteristics that are generally associated to valuable natural resources, such as minerables, fossil fuels. And we also can determine whether the classification, its availability, access, and control of these resources, and because of its focus. The strategic resources are frequently the object of national security policies. So when we take these 4 points in mind, these diagrams that were created based on the data of International Energy Agency. This is compatible with decarbonization in the Paris Agreement. The demand of these minerals will increase, and over 40% will be for copper, 60% will be for nickel, 70% growth for cobalt, and almost 90% of an increase in lithium. This is towards 2040. Therefore, how can we define these strategic resources of our 21st century? Basically, those are that are fundamental to be able to produce contemporary, that are essential to be able to maintain the global hegemony, and at the same time, they're also fundamental in order to be able to implement green economies, energy security, and also energy transition. And with regards to the importance of lithium, I want to highlight a fragment of a quote from the President of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, where she states that ensuring the supply is only a first step, and the transformation of these metals is essential. During that same speech, the president also stated that in the near future, lithium and strange soil will be more important than petroleum and gas. He also highlighted that Chinese control over the global industry of processing currently constitutes a strategic roadblock for Europe. Therefore, with regards to geopoliticals and lithium, there are specific regional positions that are clearly differential. I'm not going to go into detail on the policies of each region. I simply want to highlight the trends that exist. Therefore, in the United States, we have the law of the reduction of inflation, the IRA, which is something that was created by strong incentives for green energies and also for critical minerals with lithium. And the objective with this reduction of inflation was to be able to strengthen the domestic production of lithium. However, since 2025 with Trump, the law has suffered a lot of adjustments and changes. Now there's a greater emphasis on our tariffs and also on internal production. In Europe, the European Union, as part of their big worry about external dependency, in 2024 adopted the European regulation regarding critical prime materials or raw materials, which is basically economic security and strategic security strategy. And it covers all of the value chain in mining, processing, refining, and recycling within Europe. On the other hand, Latin America, Argentina, Chile, and Bolivia are the three countries with the greatest reserves of lithium, but the regulation models are vastly different to each other. And this makes it difficult to be able to have an adequate regional coordination to be able to create a unified supply chain. China has a dominant position within the value chain of lithium, not with regards to the administration, but also everything related to its processing. They control the biggest part of refining and the production of batteries. And this has become a bottleneck, a strategic bottleneck for the United States and also for the European Union. That's why the global dispute is not only for who is extracting the material, but also who is controlling the value chain of the lithium. Now, when we talk about lithium, let's go into a little bit of history. In Brazil, we also like to say that the history of lithium began with a Brazilian that was called José Bonifácio de Andrade, who was born in Brazil, and he was a geologist. He was well known in Coimbra, and then he was moved to Europe. And his science trajectory is very important for us because Bonifacio was independentist. He defended and supported actively the independence process in Brazil, and that's why he is known as the patriarch of independence. From the scientific point of view, José Bonifacio discovered minerals such as spudamina, cryolites, scapolites, and petalites that will then analyzed by a Swedish chemist that was able to isolate the lithium elements. So we always like to say in Brazil that the story of lithium began in Brazil. This is a timeline of history of lithium in Brazil, and it's based on an article that I wrote, which was published, and I go into detail about all of the trajectory of the industrialization of lithium in Brazil. I'm not going to share all of the chronology point by point to not extend myself, but I do want to highlight three main points that allow to understand the debate of lithium in Brazil and how it has been linked to sovereignty. First of all, is in the 1970s. At that point in time, there was a discussion to be able to create lithium salt industry. And within this context,
lithium was considered a strategic resource, primarily because its link with the nuclear industry. And it justifies to be able to have a strong state control based on national security. And our second point happened in the 90s with the creation of the Brazilian company of lithium, CBL, which is a national owned company and which was developed by Brazilian entrepreneurs. That came at a moment when there was a very specific project of building an integrated chain for lithium, with an emphasis on adding value. So within this framework, the government of back then established an executive decree to be able to protect the lithium industry that imposed controls on the exports and which allowed us to be able to have our lithium industry well developed. And the third important moment happened in 2022 when that executive decree was eliminated. And with that, the sector was significantly opened, which facilitated the entry of foreign capital. The result of this is that nowadays Brazil is outside of the chain. The country produces mainly lithium concentrate, but it has not advanced to be able to relevantly or in refining nor in the creation of battery cells. This leads us directly to a current dilemma which we are having, which is a historical dilemma that we are undergoing. Brazil can be able to bet on vertical integration, or they can liberalize the sector in order to be able to attract investment, in order to be able to guarantee the regional and local development of this. So basically, those are the two different divergent positions within the Brazilian society about how lithium should be managed based on the elimination of this executive decree that established lithium as a strategic element. And this illustrates that within the same sector, there are diverging interests. In this debate, the Brazilian industry of mining defended to be able to keep the state policies, and they said that this regulation has allowed it to be able to protect our sovereignty and fostered local development. On the other hand, Sigma Lithium, which is a company, considered that the regulation was obsolete and that it stopped our energy transition. The Brazilian lithium company, CBL, was against the elimination of the decree. They defended a model that was integrated vertically with a high added value and own technology. And finally, the Brazilian Institute of Petroleum and Gas manifested its support in the eliminating this decree. They stated the decree restricted competition, distorted the market, and also was in conflict with the economic freedom law. Just to have the current overview of lithium in Brazil, and globally speaking, according to the data of the USGS, in 2025, Brazil was located with a relevant position, even though not one of the main ones. The country had the 8th position in reserves, the 10th in resources, and the 5th one in world production. And from the geographical point of view, the main projects are the ones that are located in red, in Minas Gerais, in the valley of Jequitinhonha, and in northeast in the state of Ceará. With regards to the companies, the majority of ones that operate is an international array of companies. Most of them are from abroad, mainly from Canada, Australia, and the United States. And there is only a sole national consolidated company, which is the Brazilian Lithium Company, CBL. The majority of these projects are located in the inspection phase and the feasibility study phase. So the general trend is that there's going to be accelerated expansion accompanied with changes in the legal frameworks and also in the concessions of the mining licenses. Therefore, the sector also depends heavily on foreign capital. And despite of this, Brazil is not centrally important within the global lithium market, and much less so in the creation of batteries, as I mentioned before. And this reinforces the increasing tensions that exist with regards to economic and industrial growth. So when we talk about electromobility, lithium, and the future of energy transition in Brazil, it is important to remember that electromobility is not only a technology change, it is a transformation that is much more extensive, that includes geopolitics, value chains, and territories. and here where the lithium is the point of connection between public policy, mining, and history. Brazil has historically gone from considering lithium from a strategic mineral and having a strongly controlled industry towards liberalization of it in 2022. They're debating this right now with the creation of a state-owned company, which would be called DB Minerals, and also the creation of a national policy for critical minerals. So the true question that arises in Brazil is how can we take advantage of the lithium to be able to create technological innovation that belongs to Brazil? Or, on the other hand, they can be subordinate roles by exporting the raw materials. And I think that this debate will allow us to not only understand electromobility, but also the geopolitical and political context that defines how lithium is produced, used in Brazil and in Latin America as well. Before I conclude, I would like to share a couple of my writings that might interest you. I have two articles in Spanish regarding lithium in Latin America, was for the government of Mexico, which was part of this book, which is called Lithium in South America. And a couple of my writings that I have had in Portuguese and in English. And just to close, I would like to give you with my personal information. If you want to ask any question of the topics that I had or discuss projects related to strategic minerals or electromobility, I will be very happy to talk with you. And finally, thank you very much for your kind attention and for participating in this closure of this diploma in electromobility. It has been a pleasure. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Elaine, for your presentation. The message has been loud and clear. Without lithium, there's no batteries, and without batteries, there's no electromobility. And they also shared a couple of things that we need to take into account, considering global trends, the diverse trajectories, and also the historical processes within our region, and also in Europe and Asia. As Elaine mentioned, lithium is pivotal in order to be able to have a green economy, also for energy security and for energy transition. The historical trajectory that Brazil has had in expanding the lithium markets and the accelerated expansion is a valuable example. Such as our presenter said, electromobility is not only a technological shift, but it also involves different value chains, territories, and public policies. So thank you very much, Elaine, for your expert exposition, which really shared a lot of history and knowledge. Our second presenter is Silvia Rojas. She is the executive director of the Costa Rican Association of Electromobility, ASOMOVE. She is in charge of the Latin American Center of Sustainable Mobility. She has a degree in collective communication, and in law, she has a master's degree in project management. She worked at the Legislative Assembly of Costa Rica, where she drafted the incentive law for electric transportation, and she also worked in the presidency of Costa Rica as a counselor with regards to sustainable mobility. Currently, she has a role in the civil society, and she promotes technologies for zero emissions and also implements actions to be able to overcome the carbon-based age and decarbonize this. So thank you very much, Sylvia, for being here. The floor is yours. Hi, good afternoon, everybody. Good evening for some of you as well. I would also like to give a warm greeting to so many friendly faces that I see. And for me, it's a pleasure to be here in representation of ASOMOVE. So thank you very much for inviting me. I was reviewing a little bit about the content that you were able to review throughout this diploma over the last few months. You have had fantastic teachers, and I understand that my role, instead of going into technical aspects or going very deep, I want to share a little bit more about everything that you have learned, what is happening in our region, what is the outlook of the success stories that exist, and how we will be able to apply our knowledge. And I would like for you to understand three main focuses: an environmental focus, a health focus, and an economic focus, where primarily I'm going to be able to guide my talk today, so that you, from all of your homes and professional roles, you will be able to find and give it a little bit more sense about what electromobility means. Before we get started, I would say that electromobility is much more than the way in which we transport ourselves. Electromobility is a new way to present our economy. It's a decarbonization of the transportation sector, and it involves a lot new businesses which are appearing in many of our Latin American countries. So it's not only going from an electric bus to a car or from an electric bike. As you are able to see, we have load management, we have maintenance of an electrical vehicle, and all of this offers us and expands us a framework for opportunities where we want for Latin America to become a region that will be leading this at a global level. So I would like to congratulate you for being here as part of this diploma and that you're interested on this topic. And hopefully you will be able to identify this in each one of your countries. Having said that, I'm going to share my screen so that I can get right into my presentation. And I think that everybody can see my presentation right now. You can see it, right? Yes, we see it. Very good. So as I was sharing, I'm going to share about the status of electric mobility in Latin America, particularly with data from the Costa Rica case. And before going into this, we often think that this is new technology, this is highly revolutionary, or perhaps this is something that we need to learn because we are just starting on this. But that's not the case. Electrical mobility has over a century of history. Starting from at the end of 1800s, the first electrical vehicles appeared. And I would like you to take this into account. In 1900, so 125, 26 years now, 40% of vehicles in the United States were electrical vehicles. And even there was a project, quite a large project of electrical taxis that already used the exchange of batteries. So in reality, this is something that is beyond our generation. And currently, unfortunately, they decided to take another path. The people back in that point in time, the generation said, okay, we're going to use combustion vehicles for whatever reason it was. And that's why I want you to know that this is not something new, but I want to bring this because I think that this is a decision from our generation to shift our mindset. We're going to start moving in a way using carbon that is polluting the majority of our countries that depend on petroleum for other countries. Or, on the other hand, we can be able to transport ourselves in a way using electricity with zero emissions, and that hopefully will be able to be done with electricity made in our countries. So having said that, what happened to us? It happened, one more century went through, and right now electrical mobility is not something new. It's something that's a global agenda that is advancing quite rapidly. In some areas more than others, mind you. And we are at the expectation of receiving the data from the closure of 2025. But I want to give you a couple of projected data for 2025, where they expected that global sales would go over 20 million, which would represent 25% of the cars sold around the globe, which are electrical vehicles. Emerging economies outside of China and Latin America, they had a projection of growth in 50%. And apart from this, we expect that in 2030 that the EVs will represent over 40% of the cars sold globally. And this is according to the International Agency of Energy and Bloomberg. This is something that I wanted to mention because this is something that I saw this morning. I thought that it was wonderful. Every year, there's 100 journalists, a jury of over 30 countries that select the vehicle of the year. Right now, we have our short list of 10 vehicles. And for 2025, 5 of those 10 short lists are electrical vehicles. We have BMX iX3, Hyundai Ioniq 9, Kia EV4, Kia EV5, and the Nissan Leaf that are part of this list. I think that in April, they will be able to announce the best vehicle of the year. And something that I wanted to include is this, because I thought that it was something that really signposts and sends a message. Electrical mobility is here to stay in the automobile industry, and it's here to stay in our day-to-day life, and it's here to stay within our economic system. Here we have a couple of data of electrical mobility in Latin America. Chile decided that in 2035 they will only sell zero-emission cars, and they have their efficiency law for energy, which includes the standards of efficiency for the vehicle sector. And I understand that unfortunately now in the end of December they decided to postpone some of the targets, but at least they are keeping them with Chile, and they are the example for the region with this prohibition of the introduction of combustion vehicles up until 2035. the public transportation electrification. Some countries have led this. In this case, Chile and Colombia are the ones that have been leading in the region. Colombia has over 2,000 electrical buses in Bogota, and Chile that even has more. And I understand that Paula will talk a little bit about this in her presentation. And this is a very interesting topic. Everything that's talking about electrification in public transportation in Chile, in Guatemala, in Mexico, in Brazil, and in Argentina, they already have 100% electrical buses. Costa Rica received some ones last year. Uruguay this year will be able to be the leader of 2025 of electric vehicles in their territory. And this has been done thanks to an important expansion of its network of charger infrastructure that they have in Uruguay. And Brazil and Mexico are competing not only for the entry, but they are producing countries as well. So they are already receiving foreign investments. Important companies are entering those countries in order to produce, to be able to assemble batteries and electrical vehicles. These are data from 2024, as I mentioned. We're waiting for the 2025 data, where we know that there are changes, unfortunately, for Costa Rica, but it's very good for Uruguay. In 2024, Costa Rica was the leader with 16% of the penetration of electrical vehicles that were 100% electrical. Uruguay was second, and Colombia was third. As I said, for 2025, we know that Uruguay has increased quite a lot. I think that they have 27% of penetration of electrical vehicles in 2025. And in Costa Rica, we did have plateauing of our growth. And we are in second place, but even so, we are one of the benchmarks in the region. And this is a couple of the data that I wanted to show you. But apart from the numbers, what I want you to see is how the curve has grown starting from 2018. You're able to see how starting from 2018, the entry of electrical vehicles in Costa Rica started increasing exponentially. And the reason is a single one, and it's the public policy. In 2018, we had the law of incentives for electrical transportation in Costa Rica, and that's why you see this growth in the curve. And I say that it's a before and after when you have a public policy to create incentives for the use of a zero emission technology. In our case, in Costa Rica's case, we have reached approximately 35,000 vehicles that are 100% EVs. And something very important to know is that not only do we promote cars, we don't want more cars on the roads. The majority of the countries in Latin America are collapsed because of the amount of cars. And that's why we're so worried about the electrification of public transportation so that people leave their car homes, that they can use buses, trains, and that they are able to find a system that is comprehensive and integrated so that they will be able to move with the needs to be safe and move safe around the city. And we're not only talking about only cars in this case, we're talking about pickup trucks, which are pickup trucks. All of the ones that are small trucks, large trucks. We're going to see the cases of the trucks that we have in Costa Rica, the 50-ton trucks, which we call trailers. Then we have a couple of companies that are changing and shifting into electrical vehicles. When I talk about electrical vehicles, I'm not only talking about personal vehicles. And we have Law 9518, which is our incentives for the electrical transportation. And Costa Rica Law 9518 has various components, not only a chapter for exoneration of taxes. And this meant that a lot of people could change their cars to an EV because the exoneration and reduction of the price was over 40%. And purchasing a vehicle in Costa Rica is quite expensive, and that's a very important investment to make. Therefore, we have included a chapter for tax breaks, where we have tax breaks for the VAT. Costa Rica has a 13% VAT, it increases 1%, and it will be 4% in that case. Also, the consumption tax, which is exonerated 100%. And also the tax for property, which is something that we create every year so that the vehicle will be able to run on the road, and we're entering into the last year of exoneration. And this is a very comprehensive law that, for example, included a chapter in order to be able to talk about the charging network. And I'm going to share this with you. And as you're able to see in the second image, we have a license plate from a vehicle. The license plates in Costa Rica are white, but EVs have a green license plates, and this has been very positive. I do not know if somebody works in public policy in your countries, but definitely the fact that we have a real different license plate. A couple countries have a sticker or they have a sheet. But when you see that the license plate is a different color, it's something that can't be ignored on the road. And this has had a very positive response because you are able to see it next to you, that you see that it's a nice looking car, it's modern, it's large, it moves quite quickly. You are able to cross difficult terrain, which is something that usually can be done in Costa Rica, or it goes up mountains or volcanoes. It crosses borders without any issues. And having people see this has been very positive. And with regards to the charger network, as part of our law, we included regulations. That's very important because we oftentimes think that public policy is only related towards the exoneration of tax to purchase a vehicle. But as I said at the beginning, the electric mobility is much more than simply purchasing a vehicle. It's all of the experience that you have when you use it. And charging is a pivotal importance for that. Not only to make the decision for a family to change or for a company to change, but also to be able to have an adequate operation and also peace of mind for the company so that their collaborators will be able to move around the country and charge their vehicles without any issues. This is a map which is not an updated map. We have fast chargers in the country, but we are able to see that we have the orange ones. Those are the fast chargers that are located around the whole country. This is very important because if we take maps of other countries, generally the chargers are in the high density population, which doesn't make sense because probably there I can charge it at home or in a restaurant. But the ones that primarily are needed for fast charging are in the points of connection between cities. And in the case of our law, there needs to be a fast charger for every 80 kilometers in the highway and 120 kilometers in the county highways. So this is a tip that I always give to people that work on public policy. I ask them to include everything related to the minimum standards with regards to the charging infrastructure. Furthermore, this is another example to be able to see how, thanks to those previous factors, that curve has been able to grow. That curve is continuously growing because we have a market that has a lot more offer for people for EVs, and a market where prices have been lowered significantly because of the competition that exists. And as Asomove, we created an exercise where we compared an electrical model with a combustion equivalent. And you were able to see how a lot of the prices of the electrical cars are very similar to the combustion, or in certain cases, they're even cheaper. And this is only when you purchase them, of course, without the inclusion of everything related to the savings in the operation of those equipment, not only because of a reduction of maintenance, but also something that you're able to see that this is, you do need to provide maintenance to the car, but the costs are a lot less. At Asomove, we have people that have had cars from 2016, 2017, and they told us that they've changed the tires of the vehicle, and that's it. So you will be able to see that despite all of those savings that we have throughout the lifespan of the EV, there are also savings at the moment when you purchase a car. And in Costa Rica, we have been able to match the prices between an EV and a combustion equivalent, and it means that it's more accessible for people. And remember that we mentioned that we have a tax exoneration, but the exoneration is reduced up until 2034. And there will be no exonerations after 2034 because we don't expect them to need because the prices have been lowered. Something very important to mention as a fundamental element of this success case in Costa Rica is that as part of our law, the definition of an electrical vehicle is very clear that specifies that they are 100% EVs. In Costa Rica, we only provide exoneration of 100% EVs. And their definition in law is very clear that states that they cannot have a combustion engine. And not only for personal cars, it says a new car, but we reformed it. In a different article, we included the used electrical vehicles up until a lifespan of 5 years. And now let's talk a little bit more about environmental health and economy. I know that a lot of the people that made a change at the beginning, we did it because more of environmental consciousness. Because in Costa Rica, we always try to protect the environment and also for health issues that we're very into improving the air quality. But without a doubt, the majority of people and companies that are making the change are because an issue related to their economy. So I'm going to briefly talk about the environmental health, and then I'm going to focus a little bit more on economy. With regards to carbon emissions in the transportation sector, I think that everybody knows this, but it's also good to be able to state. The personal use vehicles are the ones that are more polluting, and the transportation sector is the one that is the highest pollutant in our country from all of that energy matrix. The transportation sector is the one that we need to work a lot stronger on in order to be able to lower emissions. And for 2024, this is an important data from the International Agency of Energy. Electric mobility has displaced 1.3 million barrels of petroleum per day. And for the ends of this decade, 2020s, we hope that it displaces 5 million barrels of petroleum per day. Even though this is an environmental and health issue, I want to also mention economy, because our countries have a great opportunity with regards to electrical mobility, because we are also producers of our own electricity in a renewable way. Plenty of our countries already have electrical matrices that are renewable. In the case of Costa Rica and Paraguay and Uruguay, that have over 90% to almost 100% of renewable energy. And we have other countries that oftentimes say we only have 40% or 50%. The important thing is that these countries can continue growing and the generation of their renewable energy, because that's our new petroleum. At least that's how we see it from our side. And as I was saying at the beginning, the very positive example with regards to health is the electrification of public transportation, in this case, electrical vehicles. And it is also very important to remember that electrical transportation in our region is not something new. We think that a lot of people might see it as something new, but when we're talking with people that are not involved in this subject matter, and perhaps in their day-to-day work, they don't really understand that they're going in an electrical bus. This is a bus in Santiago, in Chile. And when we were talking with a lot of our Chilean colleagues, they told me people go into the bus and they don't really know that it's an electrical bus. Even though it says 100% electric vehicle, they simply get on the bus and that's it. But what's true is that this is something that Paula will mention. The use of the bus is the number one means of transportation in Chile. And that's wonderful because it effectively shows that if you can modernize a public transportation system and you give people a transportation system that is modern, that is efficient, then people will decide to use it, of course. So for me, I think that that's a very wonderful example. And Latin America is the second region with most electrical buses in the world after China. So when some people says, listen, it's something that's not going to come to Latin America, that's not true. We are the second region in the globe that has the biggest quantity of electrical buses in the region. And to go on further into economic opportunities, this is something that's happening in Costa Rica. We already have national companies that are producing chargers. We have national companies that are innovating with regards to maintenance, with regards to electrical vehicles. We have specialized shops that take care of these vehicles, where you can take your EV, and the snapshot that you have here is how you can see it. The people are clean, there's no any smells, no type of sounds, and also with batteries on the right hand side, where we have seen that battery is a project, but that's not true. Battery is an asset. In Costa Rica, we have the first industrial plant of discharging, which is called Fortec, that they are already also working in Mexico. They are already recovering 98% of the EV batteries. And the project is moving thanks to the batteries of their computers that have our lithium batteries. So you are able to know that you have lithium batteries in your computers and your mobile phones. We have a lot of minerals and lithium as part of our day-to-day life. And the appropriate elimination of those batteries are done through the way that this company is doing it. And we have a solution. I also understand that Colombia has their own solutions. I think that Mexico also has their own solutions. So yes, Latin America has solutions in order to be able to get rid of the batteries. And it's a business and an economic opportunity. Because that lithium and those components that are being able to be recovered from those discharged batteries are recovered and sold to China. And this is very important for us to be leaders in the region. These are the trailers, which we call in Costa Rica the big trucks, the 50-ton trucks. And I'm going to share a couple of data of an example of Ingenio Cutris. They have 50-ton trucks, and every 3 months they stop burning 170,000 liters of fuel. That is a saving $184,000 versus $26,000 in electricity. They have total savings of 86%. Imagine going to a company and saying you're going to save 86% in the cost for your fuel and transportation fleet. And at the same time, you will be able to improve the quality of the labor of your drivers. And that's something that's very important to highlight. For example, here on screen, on the upper right-hand side, we have these charging panels of a supermarket in Costa Rica, and it's worth mentioning how much the quality has improved of the way that the drivers work. There are people that have to be working hours and driving for hours, and we discussed with them. They said, Sylvia, this is something that's changed my life. I get out of my vehicle, I'm rested, my legs don't hurt, my back doesn't hurt. It's not only an issue that the vehicle does not have any type of gas emissions, but the vehicle does not make any noise. Imagine driving 8 hours without any vibrations, without any sounds, or without any of the heat from the combustion. It actually changes people's lives. We also have the Cercanza trucks, the 50-ton trucks, which are the FEMSA, Coca-Cola company in Chile, and the Bimbo company in Central America up until 2030. They want to have 50% of their whole fleet to be 100% electrical. And Fortec, which is something that I mentioned previously, in order to be able to see how recycling works and how to give a second useful lifespan for batteries as a possibility to be able to create a business. And you will be able to give solutions to people before they throw away their materials. They understand how they are able to store energy using solar panels and what solutions can be given to people. And I would like to close with this, with the silent revolution, which are batteries. We're coming back to the future because, as we said, in 1900s, we had more electrical vehicles than in combustion in New York, and we are seeing how kilowatt hour has dropped 90% in its price since 2010, from $1,200 to less than $140 in 2024. So this is a technology that is cheaper, particularly with batteries, and this means it's going to be more accessible. And we will have new technologies that will also allow us to be able to have a greater amount of storage in less time and with less size. So obviously this will also bring us closer to our goal. And this is my final message. Today we're living in a world that's much more electric and connected. These people that you are able to see on screen are people that are associated to ASOMO, the Electrical Mobility Association Costa Rica. We're an organization that promotes electric mobility. And I always prefer to put people's faces and not their cars. Because at the end of the day, a car represents a decision of a family, a person, or a company to make a change. So instead of putting photographs of cars, I want to share the people that have taken that first step to change. In 2015, there were less than 1 million electrical vehicles, and now there's already 45 millions. And to 2030, there's going to be 240 millions of vehicles. So even though we're seeing it as a motivation in order to be able to improve the environment and our health, or maybe we can see it as a motivation to be able to expand our business and also to improve the companies that you're working with. Electric mobility definitely affords us plenty of opportunities. Here is my email. It's rojas@asomove.org. And thank you very much for your invitation. It has been a pleasure to be here with you. Thank you very much, Sylvia. It's always a pleasure to hear you. I think that this is a new way to create economy. It's the present and the future. And also having a perspective, a historical perspective, also allows us to be able to understand the dimension and the steps that we are taking with our region in Latin America and the Caribbean. You also reminded us about how important it is to be able to have public policies that take into account low emission technologies. You also shared the specific needs of the charging infrastructure, the minimum standards in order to be able to have chargers in connection points like you were able to show in your map. That helps us to be able to understand how a zero emission vehicle will be able to work, and these are very important elements that you have shared from the Costa Rica's experience, and always taking into account the intersection between environment and health. So thank you once again. It's a pleasure to listen to you, Sylvia. Now let's go to a third presentation, where we're going to move from Central America down to Chile. we're going to have the words of Paula Tapia Salas, who is a director of public transportation in the Ministry of Transportation and Telecoms in Chile. She is a lawyer by the Pontifical Catholic University of Chile. She has a master's in law and a diplomacy in public policy and public management. She has over 20 years of experience in public policies related to mobility, with a focus on integrating different methods of transportation with a gender-based focus. In 2017, she was assigned by the President of Chile, Michelle Bachelet, as the first woman in holding the position of Minister of Transportation and Telecoms. And then she performed her tasks at that secretariat. She performed as a legislative coordinator, as the head of the legal division, as the person in charge of the legal area of accountability, and also in civil nautics. So thank you very much for being here with us, Paola, and the floor is yours. Thank you very much for your invitation to the University of Santiago. Being a part of this closure of this diploma has been wonderful. I have had part of 8 courses in my life. You have mentioned the one with public policies, public management, but I've had a lot of them. Because I think that this is a fantastic way in which we are able to discuss certain topics that are of very specific interest in order to be able to have professional development, academic development, and research development. So thank you very much for inviting me. We're going to advance very quickly. I would also like to congratulate the fact that you are having a panel solely conducted by women. This is not very common, particularly in transportation, so I'm very pleased. And I would like to thank for you to be able to have brought together 3 women that have been examples from Costa Rica and here. Our presentation is related to the mobility network in Santiago de Chile. That's the name of our transportation system in the capital, in Santiago. On screen, you are able to see our national flag there. And this is an image, not of a future, but of our electrical presence in Chile. The double-decker buses are a reality, and also the electrical articulated ones. We had the first 94 buses that came a couple of weeks ago. And therefore, we are exploring not only new technologies, but also how this new technology is put into service of a public policy of state. We want to reinforce the state. This public policy was born in the with President Bachelet. Then it was transformed and is kept with President Piñera. And nowadays, in the government of President Boric, it is a policy that has been consolidated. And we hope that the next government will also continue with this fantastic challenge. Can you hear me fine? Thank you very much. So if we can move forward, we're going to be able to see a timeline that shows the reality not only of Santiago, but plenty of cities in Latin America are like this, where public transportation was not necessarily a priority. They did not have a priority to formalize it, modernize it from many governments. It was given to the private sector oftentimes in order for them to be able to give services. So Chile in the 80s, they had buses with no regulation that led us in the 90s to be able to have a worry based on public policy. Why? Because of the negative elements that we had. We had high levels of pollution. We went back into democracy in our country, and we had a government that wanted to get more involved in these public policies. We have high indices of accidents and a lot of traffic. This situation led to the first public procurement process, which had their peak in Transantiago system, which was a system that tried to have modern and change, and it was very welcome. But we do need to recognize that we made a lot of mistakes there, particularly with relation to thinking that change will be done from one day to the next. The change in education, health, and transportation don't happen in the blink of an eye. They don't belong to a government. We need to have a message that needs to be done little by little. We need to be able to have chargers, laws that were mentioned by Costa Rica, which are of the utmost importance in order for us to be able to have more electrical vehicles. But this needs to go hand in hand with public-private partnerships, and this needs to be gradually implemented. So we came to the first incorporation of electrical buses in 2017, where, as you mentioned, I was the first Minister of Transportation that was a woman in Chile. And in 2017, we were able to transform and we started this pathways towards electromobility. And we drafted something that was very important, public policy. We drafted a document that was mixed between the Academy, the Ministry of Energy, the Ministry of the Environment, the civil society, amongst others, which established the first electromobility strategy with goals, with indicators, with purposes. And that's how we reached the current transformation of the Red Movilidad system. We are a benchmark not only in Latin America but in the world in public policy that is electrical. Within you have been able to listen that there's no other city that has as many buses that is not Santiago de Chile. This makes us very proud, but it also gives us a lot of challenges. And amongst these challenges, we have a very important one, which is to be able to generate data and also make more people to be able to use public transportation, to pay for it. Therefore, the challenges exist. There's thousands of them, and we need to continue developing them. And we are able to see that this electromobility strategy that I mentioned is located to a public transportation system that potentially could transport over 7.4 million inhabitants. In the greater Santiago's, we have 38 communes where we have this system. Electromobility cannot walk on its own. This is something that the prior presentation, it's not only a bus, it's not only the battery, it's the experience of the whole journey. That's why we also placed a huge focus on transforming the bus stops. And nowadays, we finance the modernization of these bus stops. And we have been able to include a perspective of gender safety, which is also present as part of our whole structure. We have the metro network. The metro is electrical, and that's why we need to be able to include that electromobility to the already existing metro. We have 149 metro and a network of buses that covers a density of 3,185 kilometers of coverage. We have over 5 million transactions per day in these three means of transportation. And it's very important to mention that we have this ambition goal that up until March 2026, we're going to give the next government 4,400 electrical buses that are in operation, which would represent 68% of the total fleet of buses in our capital city. If we go to the next slide, we will be able to see this evolution that we have mentioned. This is the electromobility strategy. We had goals. First of all, we wanted that up until 2035, we were not going to have any type of public procurement processes that were not for 100% zero emission buses. What did we do? We said we're not going to wait until 2035. And on 2023, we had the first public procurement that was 100% electrical, not only of Latin America, but this year in the world as well. And in 2040, we also have a goal at a country level, not only at Santiago, to be able to have 100% of the vehicles of urban transport that will be zero emission vehicles. If we go to the next slide, we are able to see how this has evolved. We started with our first two buses. We needed to test it out, we needed to pilot it. But then the route was exponential without any space to take a step back. And we have been able to understand the last 4 years, starting from 2022, when Boric's government began. We had over 2,200 electrical buses. Up until 2023, by advocating the prior public procurement, we had 2,500 buses. Then the next year, and in 2025, we closed it with over 3,849 operational electrical buses. And this goal towards March 2026 of having 4,400 buses. We had an average age of buses from 8.3 years down to 3 years in comparison between March 2022 and 2026. And this graph, I do not know if this is going to work, but the next slide, we are going to be able to see, if we click play, we are able to see how the Euro 3s and Euro 4s are going down, even the Euro 5s. so that Euro 6 and the electrical vehicles will increase. Over the last few years, we have had a bulk of the buses that are electrical vehicles. In 2016, we had a regulation to be able to use Euro 6. In 2017, we began this path towards electromobility. This path in the next slide, we are able to see, you will be able to see how this has allowed us to be able to have historical reductions in emissions. The most relevant one is the polluting emissions. We're able to see how in the use of carbon, we were able to sharply decrease it with the implementation of electromobility. These mountains were not seen before because of the smog in Santiago. Santiago is located pretty much in a valley, and it produces thermal phenomena that did not allow air to be able to circulate. And this changed with electromobility. But not only that, in the next slide, you will also be able to see the lowering that we have been able to have in contaminants, but also in noise levels. And this is very important. Electro terminals. When we started with administration, we had 10 electro terminals, and in 4 years, we're going to have implemented 45 new electro terminals. This is not done by a government. The public-private partnership has been fundamental in order to be able to have this charging infrastructure that is operation in over 55 electro terminals, and in March we will have fully 55 of them. We are able to see a couple of these results. Electro terminals have also allowed us to be able to permeate with electromobility at the commune level. This is how administration started in 2021. This was a heat map that showed that the communes with electrical vehicles were mainly 4 of them. Nowadays, pretty much 100% of the communes in Santiago have electrical buses available, and plenty of them have 100% of their fleets that are served through electromobility. And this really manages the territorial equality. We did not only want the wealthy areas to be able to have them. We want the people that cannot purchase their own cars and can only travel in public transportation have a high quality public transportation system. In the next slide, we are able to see that we have also had a change with a lowering of noise. In the main axis of our capital, which are seen here, which is called La Alameda, the reduction of noise from 2019 up until 2023 with measurements that work on a day, it has reduced 44% of a reduction in acoustic, in noise levels in the city. And this is also together with a perception survey where we have seen that the inhabitants and residents that we were able to survey really value quite highly the fact that electromobility has reached them. And particularly those that work very close to the bus terminals due to the level of positive perceptive, which is over 80%. We also have a quieter city. And in the next slide, we will also be able to see that apart from a quieter city, we also have a city that has had the possibility to also have economic benefits of electromobility. On the one hand, the buses have lowered their cost in 40%, starting from 2017. And nowadays, the purchase of a diesel bus is almost at the same price of an electrical bus. But not only that, in the next slide, we will be able to see that an electrical bus generates less cost in consumption, and that's why it creates a greater efficiency. Electrical buses are 65% cheaper per kilometer, and in maintenance, they're 45% cheaper. So it's not only that they save when they purchase it, but also in the maintenance and in the efficiency costs. If we go on to the next slide, we will be able to see that these economic benefits have been collected and drafted from the environmental point of view, the social point of view. We have our first electromobility memory or report, which is located in our webpage. This is our version in Spanish, and we also have our English version. So I want to invite you to be able to scan the QR code in their first electromobility report in 2024. And to continue with my presentation, I want to share that all of this change has been done through the presentation of emerging technologies. And I'm going to share with you the presentation. You are going to be able to see in the next slide all of the different characteristics that our transportation system uses. We have the use of AI. We're also applying the Internet of Things, big data, and we're also being able to having pilot plans. So for example, we have a pilot plan of facial biometry that allows us to identify people by very safely storing the data whenever they get on a bus. And that way, we can think about tomorrow of simply paying uses our facial biometry and also to be able to lower the misuse of benefits for public transportation with this type of technology. And if we go on to the next slide, we have the concept of a connected bus. This is a connected intelligent bus that we have currently. And if we click, we are able to see the couple of its characteristics. The big thing that people best valued when we had electromobility was air conditioning, Wi-Fi, was connection to USB, cameras, all of these elements that any bus might have, of course. And that's why it's very important that electromobility goes hand in hand with high quality of service. And in the next slide, we're going to be able to zoom into all of these things. And this is all of the work that we're doing with regards to artificial intelligence, because we're applying it not only in the technology of the bus, but also in the planning of the services. We're using it on payment systems and also with the other pillars of this technological transformation. And finally, I would like to refer very briefly to the fact that this business model is possible, and you were able to study in detail during this diploma the business models that can be efficient. Our transformation of technology is based on regulatory changes, and I want to simply leave you with this final message. Right now, we would not have the amount of electrical buses that we have. The state needs to provide money. They need to be able to hedge their bets on climate change. They need to be able to operate on decarbonization. And our subsidy laws of the 2000 is what has allowed us, without a doubt, to be pioneers and benchmarks with regards to this subject matter. If we move forward, we are able to see that with this regulatory framework, we had this business model created. And it's very important the fact that we separated the payment of the fleet of buses from its operation. And I think that this is a pivotal element in order to be able to provide safety to the financing entities of the public transportation system. And then we have the terminals, which are public terminals, so that this is not an entry barrier with regards to new operators of our system. And in the next slide, we are able to see that we have this procurement process that is based on subsidy. The total costs of the Red Movilidad system are being financed 65% by subsidy and 35% by the fees that are paid by the users. And with that, we have an AFT that pays the buses, the metro, the train system, the complementary systems, and the infrastructure. Without any subsidy, in our case, we would not be able to implement it. And probably in very other countries, electromobility would not happen without subsidy. And here, we are able to see that this financing allows to be able to divide payments, which is something that's very important so that the prices of the buses are lower and guaranteeing the financists to be able to pay them and also the manufacturers that they will be paid. And I do not want to end without going on to the final slides, which is related to a very big challenge and very good challenge, gender and mobility. Here you're able to see that one of our pillars was gender in this administration, not only with regards to abuse or harassment or mobility with gender. If you still have not studied this, I'm going to give you one data. 75% of trips in Santiago are done by women in order to be able to take care of other people, while 75.2% are done by men, are only because of work-related instruments. Those that take care of our city are women, and that's why as a public authority and with the private sector, with academy and civil service, we need to be able to be responsible for that mobility for women. And we have made this as cross-sectional with gender. And what have been the results? In the next slide, we are able to see how, when we started this, with the first public procurement here, we had 40 women bus drivers. After the pandemics, we had 900 women that were bus drivers. And now I can say that we have 2,323 women that are drivers, which corresponds to 12.6% of the total number of the workforce in the public transportation system. And I want to give you something. Women are much more efficient at the moment when they drive an electrical vehicle. They work softer, they travel slower, and they were able to provide that vehicle a longer lifespan than what a man has. So even in those small details, we do need to have to be based on gender. And all of this data and the final data, we have been able to share it through the Observatory of Gender and Mobility. The observatory is an open public institution. We had that dream a couple of years ago to be able to create this place where we would be able to share good practices. We invited Lima, La Paz, Bogotá, Buenos Aires, Mexico City, San Jose, and Quito, who are the founders of the observatory. And now we also have San Jose and Quito. We have institutions that has two main purposes: to make visible the issues related to gender, share good practices, and also to be able to create common indicators. So I want to invite you to be able to check out our website in the Latin American Observatory of Gender and Mobility and find a way in which you can be a part of this. And I want to say goodbye by giving you an open invitation. We are able to see that next Monday, 12th of January, we will be able to have the first Latin American encounter of electromobility in Santiago. We will have delegations from 7 countries that will be here with us. And there we will be able to launch our second electromobility report, which will have new numbers up to date, which are even better in the results that we have obtained. So I am open to answering your questions. You have my social networks, not in the directorate, but also my own ones. So if you want to ask me any questions, please feel free to do so and move forward towards electromobility together, because it's a wonderful pathway to go. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Paola. Your presentation was incredible. She is from Chile, and I think that we had a conversation which is not only relevant but necessary for the electromobility, which is gender electromobility. What you have shared is incredible. We understand that change cannot happen immediately, they're gradual, they go step by step. You mentioned how relevant it is to be able to have public-private partnerships, and also to be able to have sub-ministry secretariat, civil society in the design and also in the execution of public policies, and also having certain goals and indicators that are very important. And we also able to understand that taking into account users by deploying a gender-based focus and environmental focuses are important, and also to be able to lower pollution. And we always need to take into account territorial equality, which is also very important with regards to inclusive and fair mobility. Thank you very much for your statistics, Paola, and for your kind words that you have shared with us today. And we're very thankful for you from Electa and from the University of Santiago, with all of the students that are present and those that are also on YouTube with us. Now I'm going to give the floor to the first closing words that will be held by the University of Santiago. Both entities have been a constant support, and together we have been able to have a huge effort with our different work. I'm going to yield the floor to Cristobal Rodriguez Contreras, who is the director of the Diploma of Electromobility. So please, Cristobal, the floor is yours. Thank you very much, Gloria. And good afternoon, good evening to everybody that's here present. Today we are closing this wonderful version of our International Diploma of Electromobility in the joint work between the University of Santiago, Chile, and the Latin American Organization and Caribbean of Energy, which is the fundamental industry for energy integration in our region. I would like to thank sincerely to Olacte for working with the University of Santiago and for leading this process that has trained people regionally and strategically that are committed with energy transition in Latin America and the Caribbean. And this partnership is a clear signposting that the region seeks to have this shared vision and this growth And this edition of the Diploma, which is our first international one, it brought together people from ministries, from secretariats of energy, from the public sector, from the private sector, and from academy from different countries in the region. And that diversity really reflects precisely the different type of ecosystem that electromobility requires in order to be able to advance. It's not worth only having technology. We need to have very well designed public policies, business models, and installed technical capabilities of people. And throughout the last couple of months, we were able to approach electromobility comprehensively. We talked about chargers, batteries, hydrogen, and we also talked about regulation, about planning, about public-private partnerships, and also social challenges of energy transition. And that combination, in our point of view, is one of the biggest strengths of our diploma, which has kept it going for over 11 cohorts. Now, as part of the University of Santiago de Chile, first of all, we want to say that training cannot only stay at a theoretical level. We have wanted to give you concrete tools that can be applied and which will allow those that are receiving their diploma to be able to make decisions, to be able to make better projects, and to lead processes for change within their institution and territory. And that objective is better thought of as a regional scale. I also want to highlight those that have been our presenters in this closing, Dr. Eliana Santos, Director Solia Rojas, and Director Paola Tapia. Their experience and trajectory reflect that electromobility is a reality ongoing, and it's a huge challenge as well. To the students as well that were part of this diploma, I would like to say that you are now part of a regional network of professionals in the area. It's a network that have hundreds of graduates and is trying to accelerate decarbonization in our countries. Now our challenge is to be able to take that knowledge into practice and adapting it into our local context in order to become a true impact. And finally, I would like to also thank all of the academic team and all of the management team that were behind this international sector. We hope that this has been a starting point for greater collaboration, for a new project, and also for new regional initiatives in electromobility. So thank you very much, everybody, for your commitment, for your participation, and for being an active part of this energy transition that we have been able to jointly create. Thank you very much, Cristobal, and also to Hernanilo Fernandez, the Director of Electromobility. Hi. Good afternoon. First of all, I think that I want to share a little bit more about the story of this diploma, how it started. As Cristobal, our director, said, this is the 12th version, but this started as a dream 6 years ago, where the university was trying to find how we could share our knowledge, the experience of the industry, and the knowledge of academia, and also to make it a little bit more formalized through a program that had a 100% focus on electromobility. And this happened with our first version. We share this as an anecdote, but it was simply a dream that we had. We saw this as a new technology. It was talking about the future more than the present. But a lot of entities trusted in us. This grew, and now we have over 300 graduates of our program. And approximately 2 years ago, in one of my presentations, I had a talk, I believe that it was in Panama. I found the director of OLACTE, Don Andrés Robolledo. He was the executive director. And we were talking about this topic, about sharing knowledge, but that was cross-sectional, that would be able to share to all of Latin America. So we started working jointly, and we created this partnership between OLACTE and university. And now we are living in the reality, their dreams come true. We created the Diploma of Electromobility, and it was very interesting to allow to have students from 15 different countries, where we were able to create a national strategy for electromobility. And we picked a couple of countries from the region, and we set our minds in order to be able to develop this. We shared the experiences from Chile, from other countries, about how to create public policies, how we can create economic, non-economic incentives. So it was very interesting to see how this grew. And for us, more than what we are able to teach, the thing that we were able to learn from our students was even greater. And that was very important for us to be able to acquire that experience, what our students were able to share with us. And as a university, you were able to enrich us tremendously. And nowadays, as Cristobal says, is it allows us to be able to have that starting path about the things that are moving on, that we will continue working for the region. We have standardizing things. We're creating interoperability that is feasible in our region in order to be able to share knowledge and also to be able to have the technical elements that are necessary with electricity, with energy. And the most important thing of all of this is our human capital, our human talent. And that's when we, as a university, we are extremely pleased because we have been able to provide you with the necessary tools to be able to define public policies, to be able to develop business models, etc. So with this, I would like to say that I'm extremely happy. This was a dream. As a university, we had a dream, and the fact that we can be able to partner up with Olacte was huge because we have been able to reach so many countries. All of our students in this version and other versions have been a huge input for our learning as well. And I think that we're not giving technology, but with electromobility is that we're providing a publicity. We're providing dignity in the transportation of users in our region. So we have a social task that is quite large to be able to develop this as a university. We are fully convinced that this is the path forward. So I would like to thank each and every one of you, to Olagbe, to all of our students, and also to all of our teachers and international presenters that have shared their time with you. And as Gloria said, this session was very special because women were also very present. For us, it was very important to be able to have a presentation of 3 women because women make a difference. This is what Director Paula Tapia said, that the women bus drivers allow us to be able to have a better performance in the transportation system, and that's a reality. We have analyzed, we have used KPIs, and we have understood that it generates a better functioning and care, and even in the treatment towards our users. So this is the path that we need to continue walking by. So I want to close with this by thanking each and every one of you. Thank you very much, Hernan, and definitely thank you, Cristobal, and to all of our team that have provided support from the University of Santiago to be able to make this. And I'm going to give the floor to the Executive Director of OLACE, Andres Rojas. Thank you very much, Gloria. Good afternoon, everybody. It's an absolute pleasure to see you. I'm going to take only 2 or 3 minutes because I understand that you have been in these talks today, but apart from this, it has been an intensive course as well. I have the feeling that, generally speaking, there's a good assessment of the course, and I think that the people are very pleased from what they have been able to learn as part of our program. And they have told us that they actually put in quite a big effort. It was being connected for a lot of hours, twice per week, I think is what it happened, or 3 times per week, I can't remember. So I think that this is something that we do need to recognize. And I simply want to highlight the partnership that we have had with Hernan and Cristobal and probably the people who discussed here. We, as part of OLACTE, have the vision of developing the electrical sector in Latin America and in the Caribbean. This means that we want to be involved with all of the energy ecosystem of our region. And this is not only with government or companies, but fundamentally with academia. And with this in mind, we want to have this possibility of have this virtuous encounter between the University of Santiago and us as part of OLACDE to be able to share knowledge with the region was a fantastic opportunity. And it was a very specific department of the University of Santiago that has a level of expertise that is very valuable with regards to electromobility and these technologies. I would like to add that we are in charge of a lot of studies and perspectives, and we have 2 things that are moving forward step by step. That's still not with the speed that we would like for them to be. We are always placing an effort in the implementation, the decarbonization of our different sectors, in this case transportation. However, Latin America, to a certain extent over the last few years, has been involved without a doubt in this new technology. There are different modalities, in some cases with policies, with decisions, and with incentives, in other countries less so. Having said that, I think that when we have an outlook of our region, that there's two processes that are coherent and that are expanding, or three of them. More renewable energy sources, more electrification, and in this case, more electrification also in public transportation through electromobility. That's what the numbers state. And this is something that we have been able to discuss over the last few years. The last monitoring that we do twice a year with regards to electrical mobility, we have been able to see that we have 700,000 electrical vehicles in the region. We have countries that are making important steps with private vehicles and also with electrical buses, where a lot of countries are also starting to electrify their fleet of buses, and also corporate fleets are beginning to shift as well. Therefore, nowadays, this is moving forward, and we thought that it was very pertinent to create this program. I would like to thank each and every one of the teachers, the coordinators, the students that also placed a huge effort of connecting themselves twice per week. And even though it makes life easier because we can have 15 countries met together, it is also a huge effort for people for concentration and participation. So thank you very much to each and everyone who was involved. And hopefully there will be a second version of this program and then a third one. Hopefully it will not only be 15 people, but hopefully 15 countries, 27 countries that are part of our organization. And we have a couple of observing organizations, which is the EU. We have translation to English as well, so that makes things a lot easier as well. So we will see how we move forward towards our second version of this program. That will be a reloaded version or recharge version that will be able to increase our learning. Thank you very much for the space, for finalizing this program, and thank you very much and congratulations for your hard work. Hopefully this will be able to enrich your own professional and private lives, and also it will allow us to be able to take this to each and every one of your locations. So thank you once again. Thank you very much, Secretary. We would like to thank our presenters for your presentations, which were very high quality, for the availability of sharing their learning with our students, and also those people that are here with the YouTube. We want to ask each and every one of you to please turn on your cameras to take an official photograph, a final photograph, understanding that mobility is sustainable and that it is present in Latin America and the Caribbean. And as has been stated by our presenters with Elaine, Paola, and Sylvia, it has an industrial transformation which will be able to create public policies and also territorial considerations, economic and social elements. Also taking into account how we are able to include transportation, seeing as our electrical sector is dynamic, active, and diverse, and also that which will allow us to share these experiences to consolidate our advances towards a sustainable future that's safe and inclusive. So please turn your cameras on for one final photograph. Let us comb our hair a little bit first. Please let us know, Vale or Fernando, who's going to take the photograph. This will be the best image. Frank, good to see you. He's on the beach.
I hope it's not
1, 2, 3. Hopefully it's the real beach and not just a background picture. Thank you very much once again to each and every one of you. And we want to invite you to keep on being here with us in all of the academic offering that we have and the training and strengthening of capabilities that we have with Olacte for you. So thank you once again for being here with us. And thank you very much for the people that were here on YouTube with us as well.
Recording stopped.
Muchas gracias a todos. Muy buen curso, lo aprecio mucho.
Gracias a todos.
Gracias a ti.
Muy bueno, gracias.
a todos.
Gracias, gracias
Gracias.
por
Quiero
participar.
Very
posite.
much.